Years before the first official shots of the American Civil War were fired, the border between Missouri and Kansas was already drowning in blood. This is William Clarke Quantrill. In 1857, he was a 19-year-old schoolteacher from Ohio who quickly realized teaching wouldn't make him rich, so he moved out west looking for cheap land and easy opportunity. History often remembers him as a hardened Confederate partisan, but early on he was remarkably flexible. When he first arrived in Kansas, he even praised the Free State abolitionists, as long as they could advance his personal interests. The frontier was entirely devoid of legal authority. It was a vacuum that attracted ideological zealots fighting over slavery, but it also served as a magnet for grifters turning chaos into cash. Quantrill's true motives surfaced at the Morgan Walker farm. He convinced a group of abolitionists to raid the property, but he secretly tipped off the owners and sold his partners out to an ambush. All four were killed. To avoid arrest, he invented a lie about a fictional Native American savior, claiming he was the victim. Authorities bought it, and he walked free. When the Civil War formally began, Quantrill tried riding with the official Confederate Army, but after fighting in the slow, bloody infantry lines of Wilson's Creek, he realized traditional military life wasn't for him. He despised the rigid structure of marching masses of men into artillery fire. His real talent was operating in the shadows, striking quickly, deceiving the enemy, and profiting from the disorder of guerrilla combat. As he built his irregular fighting force, Quantrill didn't seek out trained soldiers. He recruited traumatized teenage farm boys, kids as young as 18 who had watched Union troops execute their fathers and burn their land. They operated out of the deep ravines and rocky slopes of eastern Jackson County, known as the Snaya Bar. Southern sympathizers in the area provided the logistical backbone, feeding the boys, hiding their horses, and supplying them with ammunition. The federal government struggled to contain the insurgency, leading Union General Henry Halleck to issue a harsh martial law decree. He declared that guerrillas would no longer be treated as prisoners of war, but would instead be hanged as robbers and murderers. Quantrill immediately retaliated. He abandoned the early practice of paroling captured Union soldiers and instituted a strict no-quarter policy. Captured enemies were given 2-minute mock trials and promptly executed. The Union's attempt to establish order through a military decree achieved the exact opposite. By stripping away prisoner protections, Halleck erased the last remaining rules of war on the border, guaranteeing every future engagement would be a fight to the death. Trying a new tactic to break the insurgents' supply chain, Union General Thomas Ewing ordered the arrest of the women and young girls who were feeding and sheltering Quantrill's men, locking them up in a makeshift prison in Kansas City. In August 1863, the crumbling building housing these female prisoners suddenly collapsed, crushing many women and children inside and leaving survivors severely maimed. Among the victims were the sisters of Quantrill's most brutal lieutenant, Bloody Bill Anderson. This loss effectively severed the guerrillas' last connection to traditional restraint. Where they once boasted of protecting the ladies, they now spoke only of satiating a personal debt of blood. Seeking ultimate revenge, Quantrill organized the largest irregular force of the war. He gathered 450 horsemen and led them 50 miles deep into Union territory, riding all night toward the abolitionist capital of Lawrence, Kansas. They arrived at 5 in the morning while the town was asleep. When the state provost marshal signaled from a window to ask what their business was, Quantrill simply looked up and replied, "Justice and plunder." With the town's weapons locked away in an armory, the citizens were defenseless. The raiders charged down Massachusetts Street, burning the city to the ground and executing nearly 200 unarmed men and boys. The destruction of Lawrence represents the absolute failure of the frontier social order. It was the endpoint of a years-long feedback loop, where every Union decree and every guerrilla raid served only to justify the next, more horrific act of violence. The federal retaliation was immediate and sweeping. In response to the massacre, General Ewing issued Order No. 11. This directive forcefully depopulated massive swaths of western Missouri. Union troops evicted 20,000 people from their homes and then burned the structures to the ground, creating a desolate wasteland that became known as the Burnt District. But displacing the local population only scattered the violence. Quantrill rapidly lost control of his bloated ranks. Fully radicalized lieutenants, like Bloody Bill Anderson, splintered off to commit their own horrific acts of mass murder, including pulling unarmed soldiers off a train in Centralia and executing them. Wielding total warfare against a civilian population provided no tactical victory for either side. It only bred uncontrollable splinter factions and guaranteed apocalyptic ruin for the people caught in the middle. Eventually, even the Confederate government grew disgusted with the unending guerrilla violence. Needing real troops rather than rogue death squads, they repealed the Partisan Ranger Act, effectively disavowing Quantrill and his remaining men. His end was remarkably undignified for a man who had built such a fearsome reputation. Fleeing east with a tiny remnant of his gang, Quantrill was ambushed by bounty hunters at a farm in Kentucky, where a bullet to the back left him paralyzed and dying. Biographers later tried to paint him as a dashing figure, a hero of Southern chivalry riding a splendid horse with a sweeping black plume. But the historical record shows an opportunistic warlord who betrayed his allies and murdered unarmed civilians. He thrived precisely because the border was devoid of rules, which leaves a lingering question. Was William Clarke Quantrill a legitimate partisan operating in a ruthless war, or was he simply the architect of the deadliest domestic terror event in American history?